She thought she was protecting the bank until the police arrived and she realized she had just called 911 on the owner. It was a regular afternoon at Fairview Bank and Trust, or at least, that's how it started. The scent of fresh brewed coffee drifted through the air, mingling with the faint hum of printers and quiet chatter. Employees moved behind the counter, greeting customers with routine smiles. Their voices rehearsed from years of repeating the same lines. Then the door swung open. He wasn't dressed like most of the clientele. No tailored suit, no polished loafers, no leather briefcase. Just a black man in his late 40s, dressed in a plain hoodie, jeans and a pair of clean but well-worn sneakers. He walked in with an easy stride, head slightly tilted as he scanned the room. Nobody spoke to him at first. A few glanced his way, then turned back to their transactions. He wasn't causing a scene, wasn't looking for trouble. He simply took a seat in the waiting area, pulled out his phone, and scrolled through his emails. Behind the counter, Linda Pearson, the branch manager, barely noticed him at first. She was reviewing loan applications, skimming through pages of financial statements, signatures, and credit histories. Then something made her look up. He was still sitting there. 5 minutes. 10. Other customers had come and gone, yet he remained. No checkbook in hand, no deposit slip. Just waiting. Linda frowned, her fingers tightening around the pen in her hand. Something about the way he sat, so comfortable, so at ease, made her uneasy. She turned to Greg, a young teller beside her. "Do you know him?" Greg glanced at the man, then shook his head. "No idea. Maybe he's waiting for someone." Linda's eyes stayed locked on the stranger. Maybe, but something in her gut told her otherwise. The bank had its usual crowd, retirees depositing pension checks, business owners with hefty transactions, middle-class families setting up accounts. A man like him, dressed like that, sitting there without speaking to anyone, it wasn't something she saw often in this part of town. She watched as he leaned back, tapped on his phone, then checked his watch. The movement was casual, but to Linda, it felt calculated. Her pulse quickened. She had worked in banking for over 20 years. She knew the signs. She turned back to Greg. "Keep an eye on him. If he doesn't move in the next 5 minutes, let me know." Greg hesitated. "You think he's—" "I don't know yet." Linda tried to focus on her paperwork, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. 3 more minutes passed. That was it. She reached for her phone. "Yeah, this is Linda Pearson at Fairview Bank. We have a suspicious individual sitting in our lobby. He's been here for over 15 minutes without approaching the counter. Could you send someone to check it out?" The operator asked for details. Linda gave a brief description, lowering her voice as she spoke. Across the lobby, the man glanced up, his eyes flickering toward her for the briefest moment. Then he went back to his phone. Linda exhaled, heart pounding in her chest. She had done the right thing. She was sure of it. But the next few minutes would prove otherwise. The air inside the bank felt different now. The usual rhythm of transactions and casual conversations carried on, but beneath it, there was something heavier. Linda kept her eyes on the man while pretending to focus on her paperwork. He was still there. Not anxious, not restless, just waiting. She stole a glance at the glass entrance doors. No police yet. Greg cleared his throat beside her. "You sure this is necessary?" Linda stiffened. "He's been sitting there for almost 20 minutes, Greg." Greg shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Across the lobby, an older white couple stepped inside. The woman took one look at the man in the hoodie and clutched her purse a little tighter. Linda caught it. It wasn't just her. Others felt it too. A few more minutes passed. Then, flashing blue and red lights. 2 uniformed officers pushed through the doors, scanning the room. Their presence sent a ripple through the bank. Conversations quieted. A man at the ATM stole a quick glance, then looked away. Linda waved them over. The officers, a tall, broad-shouldered white man in his late 40s and a younger black officer who looked barely out of the academy, approached her counter. "You called about a suspicious person?" the older officer asked. Linda nodded and subtly gestured toward the waiting area. "He's been here for a while, hasn't approached the counter, just sitting there on his phone. I don't know what he's waiting for." The younger officer frowned slightly. "That's it." Linda hesitated but held firm. "I just want to be cautious. The older officer gave a curt nod. "We'll talk to him." They turned and walked toward the man in the hoodie. Linda watched closely. The man looked up as the officers stopped in front of him. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes. Something tired, like he had seen this before. "Sir, can we talk to you for a second?" the older officer asked. The man blinked, then put his phone away. "What's this about?" Linda could hear everything from behind the counter. "We got a call," the older officer said, his voice even. "You've been here for a while. Mind showing us some ID?" The man exhaled, slow and measured. "What am I being accused of?" His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it now. The younger officer cleared his throat. "Nothing, sir. Just a routine check." The man looked from one officer to the other, then glanced toward the counter. His gaze met Linda's for a split second. Then he reached into his pocket, moving slow, deliberate. He pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open, and handed over a driver's license. The older officer studied it, then his brows pulled together. The younger officer leaned in for a look. His eyes widened slightly. The silence stretched a beat too long. Linda shifted in her seat. Something was off. The older officer cleared his throat and handed the ID back. His posture changed, stiff, awkward. "Mr. Taylor," he said carefully, "you own this bank." The room went still. Greg stopped typing. The older couple at the counter turned their heads. Even the security guard near the entrance straightened. The man, Mr. Taylor, leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "That's right." The older officer glanced toward Linda. His jaw moved slightly, like he was grinding his teeth. The younger officer spoke first. "Sir, we apologize for the misunderstanding. We weren't aware." Taylor cut him off with a small shake of his head. "No need to explain." His voice was calm, but there was something behind it, something sharp. Then he turned, his gaze locking onto Linda. A muscle in her throat tightened. For the first time, it hit her. She had called the cops on her boss. And now, there was no taking it back. A heavy silence settled over the room. The officers stood awkwardly, the weight of their mistake thick in the air. The younger one shifted on his feet, glancing at his partner as if unsure what to do next. Linda's face burned. Her fingers gripped the counter so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Mr. Taylor, no, her boss, was still watching her, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I'm curious," he said, his voice smooth, steady. "At what point did I become a problem?" Linda opened her mouth, but no words came out. Taylor turned his gaze to the officers. "Was it when I walked in? When I sat down? Or was it when I decided not to rush to the counter like everybody else?" The older officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we were just responding to a call. We didn't mean any disrespect." Taylor exhaled through his nose. He seemed tired, but not surprised. "Did you ask what the call was about before you walked in here? Hands on your belts?" Neither officer answered. Taylor nodded slowly. "Didn't think so." Linda felt her stomach twist. He turned back to her now. "And you," he said. "Tell me, Linda, what did I do that made you so uncomfortable?" Her throat tightened. I just didn't recognize you," she stammered. "You were sitting there for a while and I wasn't sure." His eyebrows lifted. "Wasn't sure of what?" Linda's mouth opened, then closed. The bank was silent. Everyone was listening now. Customers, employees, the security guard by the door. No one moved. Greg swallowed hard beside her. The older couple who had walked in earlier looked embarrassed, suddenly fascinated by their shoes. Taylor let the silence hang before leaning forward just slightly. "Let me help you out," he said. "You saw a black man in a hoodie, sitting in a place you didn't think he belonged. And instead of asking me if I needed help, you called the police." Linda flinched. Taylor sat back. "Do you do that for all customers, or just the ones that look like me?" I didn't mean—" "You did," Taylor interrupted, his voice still level. "You just didn't expect the consequences." Another silence. The officers shifted uncomfortably. The younger cop cleared his throat. "Again, Mr. Taylor, we're sorry about the misunderstanding. if there's anything we can do." "There is," Taylor said, cutting him off. The officer hesitated. "What's that?" Taylor's eyes didn't leave Linda's. "Leave." The officers hesitated only a second before giving stiff nods. Without another word, they turned and walked out, the automatic doors sliding shut behind them. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Linda's hands trembled as she tried to focus on the screen in front of her, but she could feel his eyes on her. Everyone's eyes. "Mr. Taylor, You should be asking yourself something, Linda," he said, standing now. He was tall, but he didn't have to be. The weight of the situation made him loom over her. She swallowed hard. "You should be asking yourself why I had to prove I belonged here." The words cut through her like glass. Taylor looked at Greg. "Can you get my assistant on the phone? I'd like to have a meeting." Greg nodded so fast it was almost comical. Yes, sir." Taylor didn't say another word to Linda. He simply turned and walked toward the back offices, his offices, leaving her standing there, exposed for what she had done. And for the first time, Linda had to sit with the weight of a question she never wanted to ask herself. The bank slowly returned to its usual rhythm, customers making transactions, employees typing away, the faint hum of printers filling the silence. But something was different. The atmosphere had shifted, like an invisible weight pressing down on everyone in the room. Linda felt it the most. She tried to focus, tried to go back to work, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The usual small talk between tellers had vanished. No one met her eyes. Even Greg, who had always been chatty, kept his head down, busying himself with the register. It was the customers that got to her the most. An older black woman, who had been standing in line during the whole ordeal, walked up to her window. Her eyes held something Linda couldn't name. Disappointment? Sadness? Recognition? Linda forced a smile. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" The woman slid a deposit slip across the counter. Her voice was soft but firm. "You should be ashamed." Linda's breath hitched. The woman didn't say anything else, just watched her with the kind of knowing look that cut deeper than any insult ever could. Linda processed the deposit in silence, her face burning with something close to humiliation. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the whispers. A group of young professionals near the business accounts desk spoke in hushed tones, throwing glances in her direction. A man at the loan officer's desk murmured something to the person sitting across from him, shaking his head. They all knew. Linda swallowed the lump in her throat, keeping her eyes fixed on her screen. Maybe this would blow over. Maybe by next week, no one would even remember. But as if to mock that thought, the front doors opened again, and in walked Amanda Rivers, one of the regional executives. Linda's stomach twisted into a knot. Amanda was sharp, no nonsense. The kind of woman who could fire you with a smile and still have you thanking her on the way out. She walked in with quick, decisive steps, her eyes scanning the room before landing on Greg. "Where's Mr. Taylor?" Greg straightened immediately. "In his office, ma'am." Amanda nodded, then walked past the counter without so much as a glance at Linda. That was bad, really bad. Linda's throat went dry. The assistant manager from the branch across town had once made an insensitive comment to a customer, and within a week he was gone. Would they fire her? She felt the weight of a dozen stares pressing down on her. Then Greg, of all people, muttered under his breath, "I told you it wasn't necessary." Linda's head snapped toward him. He wasn't looking at her, just counting bills, his voice barely above a whisper. "You saw him sitting there minding his business," Greg continued. "You called the cops anyway." The words stung. She opened her mouth to defend herself, to say what she didn't know, but the words wouldn't come. Because what could she say? That she hadn't meant it? That it wasn't about race? That she would have done the same thing if it had been a white man in a hoodie? She knew deep down that wasn't true, and the worst part, so did everyone else. Linda's shift dragged on, but she barely processed the rest of the day. Every interaction felt heavy, every glance a reminder of what she'd done. She had worked at Fairview Bank and Trust for over 15 years. She knew the ins and outs of the business, prided herself on being good at her job. Yet now, none of that mattered. By the time the clock hit 5, the usual relief of ending a long workday never came. Instead, dread curled in her stomach as she walked toward the back offices. She knocked once on the glass door of Mr. Taylor's office. "Come in." She hesitated before stepping inside. The room was sleek and modern, Nothing excessive, just a polished desk, a few framed photos, and a large window overlooking the street. Taylor sat behind the desk, arms resting on the chair's armrests, watching her. He didn't say anything, just waited. She swallowed. "I wanted to apologize." He exhaled slowly, nodding once. "For what?" Linda blinked. "For the misunderstanding earlier. I didn't—" "Stop." The word was firm, clipped. "You keep calling it a misunderstanding," Taylor said, "but it wasn't." Linda's stomach twisted. Taylor leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Linda, when you saw me sitting there, did you think I was lost? Did you think I was dangerous? Or did you just think I didn't belong?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You saw a black man in casual clothes in a bank, and the first thing you did was assume he was a threat." Linda flinched at the word. "That's not—" "It is," Taylor cut her off. His voice never rose, but the weight of it crushed her all the same. She lowered her gaze. "You didn't ask me if I needed help," he continued. "You didn't approach me, didn't treat me like any other customer. You went straight to the police." Linda's face burned. "I've owned this bank for 3 years," Taylor said, shaking his head slightly. "I've put money into this community. I've hired people like you, people I thought I could trust to treat customers with basic decency. And today, I got a first-hand look at how some of my employees actually operate." Her breath caught. "Are you firing me?" Taylor studied her for a long moment. "Tell me, Linda, what do you think would have happened if I wasn't the owner?" The question made her stomach drop. If he had been just another black man in a hoodie, sitting in that lobby, waiting. If the police had walked in and found nothing in their system linking him to the bank, would they have asked him to leave, patted him down, arrested him? Her hands trembled. Taylor sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "I'm not firing you today, but I am putting you on unpaid leave." Linda's heart skipped. "You need to think about what happened," Taylor said simply. "Because I'm going to be thinking about whether you still deserve to work here." Her mouth went dry. "That'll be all." She wanted to argue, to explain herself, to say she wasn't a bad person, that she hadn't meant for any of this to happen. But nothing she said would change the truth. So she nodded stiffly, turned, and walked out. And for the first time all day, no one looked at her as she left the building. Linda sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She hadn't even started the engine yet. Her mind replayed everything, over and over. The moment she first noticed Mr. Taylor, the decision to call the police, the way the officers had stiffened when they realized who he was, the way he had looked at her, not angry, not loud, just disappointed. And now, she was sitting here, suspended without pay, with no idea if she even had a job to come back to. For 15 years, she had thought of herself as a good person, someone fair, reasonable. But today had forced her to ask herself a question she didn't like. Was she part of the problem? She had never thought of herself as racist. She had never used slurs, never treated black customers differently. At least, she had believed that. But then, why had she been so quick to assume the worst? She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. A memory surfaced, one she hadn't thought about in years. She was 16, working her first summer job at a small grocery store. The manager had warned her to keep an eye on certain types of customers. Back then, she hadn't questioned it. She had just followed the rules. And maybe all these years later she was still following them without even realizing it. She finally started the car, but she didn't drive away. Not yet. Instead, she reached for her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen before she typed in a search. Unconscious bias in the workplace. The results loaded instantly. Articles, studies, real stories. She clicked on the first one. It was time to start learning. Because for the first time, Linda understood something. Being a good person wasn't enough. She had work to do. Prejudice doesn't always show up in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like a gut feeling that turns out to be a learned bias. It's in the moments when we assume, when we react before we think. And the truth is, we all have blind spots. But the question is, what do we do once we see them? This isn't just about Linda. It's about all of us. So maybe today, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself the uncomfortable questions. Because awareness is the first step to change. And if you got something from this story, consider subscribing for more thought-provoking content. Because conversations like this, they matter.